And at that point, we're like, okay, we need a name, right? And she said, well, how do people normally introduce you? And I said, they don't give a shit who I am. They just say, talk to my Amazon guy. And she looked at me and I looked at her and, well, turns out GoDaddy, it was available. So that was the name. I grew the business to $10 million completely from inbound content.
What kind of advice would you give someone who wants to start out selling on Amazon?
Yeah, so make sure you spend months picking your product. Stick to what you know. But if I try to sell bamboo dental floss, and I'm not a dentist, I'm going to lose to the dentist who sells bamboo dental floss. And so use data only to support your decisions, not to dictate your decisions. How you decide which product you are going to sell will dictate everything. But if you build a private label brand on Amazon, it can be life-changing wealth for you and your family.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Selling on Amazon can be a nightmare with rising fees, fierce competition, and very little support. But today, we're joined by Stephen Pope, the founder of My Amazon Guy, who has mastered the art of overcoming these challenges. His agency, with $20 million in annual revenue, helps brands boost traffic, lower ACOS, and increase conversions.
Thanks for having me on, Mike.
You really, truly appreciate you being here. So tell me, you were once a TV reporter and an e-commerce director. So what inspired you to transition from that to founding My Amazon Guy?
I was doing a live weather hit in Wisconsin, biggest blizzard the state had seen in a decade. And I couldn't even see the cameraman. So when I went on the air, I just stood there for 25 seconds and I literally couldn't see anything. It was that big of a blizzard. My hair froze over. I had hair at the time. And I just was like, man, I want to be home in my pajamas right now. This is so awful. I got fired from that job like 3 weeks later before I had the chance to quit. That's how bad it was going. And, and so I was relieved. Anyway, fast forward a couple of years, I transitioned into e-commerce and education, and I've been doing that ever since. I fell in love with Amazon along the way and decided to make that my niche. And I did. And God bless the trash man for taking those brand boxes away because there's a lot of them in my house.
Sounds like, yes, we here in Vegas, we have our trash on Fridays, and it's like a Friday morning ritual with my wife and I, chopping up the boxes, putting them into the recycling bin, etc. So that's funny that you say that. So can you share with me the story behind the name My Amazon Guy?
I got laid off. I've been fired a bunch in my life from failed startups, layoffs, right? And so I would go into these companies, I would do my job, I would triple the sales in 6 months, and then the company would implode on itself despite my best efforts. And it was a super frustrating process. Same thing happened at my fifth failed startup called Lights Online. And they laid me off. They gave me a 3-month severance. And I'd only worked there a year. For perspective, they moved me across the country to take the job and they felt bad. And I had done my job and I grew them to $1 million per month from basically nothing. Long story short, I was 30 years old at the time. I was making 200 grand a year. And there was a 48-hour period where I wondered, had I peaked? Was I ever going to do that again? Am I going to have to go take a $100,000 job next and cut it in half? I stewed. I went outside. I looked at the sun. I stewed some more. And then I said, F that. I'm going to go start my own company. A lot of people would have gone on vacation or something or taken longer than 48 hours, but not me. Nope. I made a whole full blown business plan that following 4 hours when I decided to do it. And I'm here to tell you that the vision I came up with in those 4 hours is still intact today, 6 years later. I built the whole business around me. And my wife, when I was in the laundry room with her, I made a LinkedIn post. I had my first client signed in under 48 hours. And at that point, we're like, okay, we need a name. And she said, how do people normally introduce you? And I said, they don't give a shit who I am. They just say, talk to my Amazon guy. And she looked at me and I looked at her and it turns out GoDaddy, it was available. And then I hired a female as my second employee.
What a great story. I like it too, because like I told you earlier, when I would get called in, I was a CTO for this organization. I'd get called in and this is our tech guy. And I'm like, I have a name. You have to introduce me. And I would get people calling and they'd say, hey, Mike, there's someone on the phone asking for our tech guy.
The reason people have the last name, whatever.
It was how they were. It was their role back then. Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. People don't realize that sometimes. They're like, oh, isn't it interesting that their last name is Farmer? Oh, I wonder if they were a farmer.
And my last name's Pope.
So tell me, what are some of the biggest challenges that brands face when they sell on Amazon?
profitability and growth. Everything's going to come down to one of those two challenges, right? I'll give you many examples. Here's one of my favorites, though. I keep this on my desk to remind me I'm not an expert, right? I wanted to sell a hot sauce bottle on Amazon. So I spent $1,500 just designing the label. I hired the pros, did all these taste tests. I'm like, it's going to be a glass bottle because I want it to be one of those rural high ends. It got to be good because it comes in a glass bottle. I made it a sweet heat because I wanted it to be unique. Nobody had done a sweet heat on Amazon before, right? So I get this great product and I'm doing this out of my garage at this point. And so I decide I'm going to pay Amazon to do the prep work. And I ship 1,000 of these bottles into Amazon on a pallet. So Amazon takes the bubble wrap and wraps the bottles, slaps on the sticker, and we're good so far. Then I launch the product and I start getting pictures from customers because I was like all over this on social media. Buy my hot sauce. This is going to be great. You guys are all going to love it. And it's awesome. So I get a text message from my brother, first one that came in. He's, dude, it broke on the way. Oh, and by the way, they shipped it in padded envelopes. It's a 5-pound glass bottle. I paid Amazon to do the prep work. What do you mean they shipped it in a padded envelope? 17 text messages later, pictures of hot sauce all over the place, padded envelopes, glass shards, sauce in people's mailboxes. I had a lot of pissed off people. For some reason, my launch still did well. 5-star review average, 4.7 equivalent, right? So I had a good product, but the logistics was a nightmare. I had been selling on Amazon for companies for 10 years prior to that experience, and I didn't see that one coming. Amazon is so dumb that they have policies that if it can fit in a 12-inch box or padded envelope, they'll put it in the envelope, regardless if it's glass or anything else. And so I learned from that experience that you can't trust Amazon and that you must have everything ready to be shipped to the consumer from the start. So that experience cost me, I don't know, $12,000. Now imagine if I can help 100 customers save $12,000 and I charge them $1,000 each, boom, I got a business. So from an early stage, I started learning about all of the challenges that Amazon had. And there's advertising management, there's search engine optimization. You got to know how to do your designs and how to index and rank the products and get the conversion. And then there's this thing called click-through rate, and you have to have the right main image set up a certain way. And so I figured these things out. I started documenting them all, and I just shared everything online. I made video after video on YouTube. I made LinkedIn post after LinkedIn post and just shared my story. And I grew the business to $10 million completely from inbound content. Straight up. No outbound process. I had to start the outbound process to get to $20 million. And I did that 2 years ago. The growth's been good. The content's been helpful. I love selling on Amazon, but I speak to the truth. It's not passive income. So if you're listening to this wondering if you should sell on Amazon, the answer is it depends. Right? If you've got $5,000, $6,000 you could spend without losing your shirt or the ability to pay rent, I'd say it's an okay investment. But if you're 60 years old and you're looking for passive income and you don't want to log into anything, this is not for you.
Yeah, I've heard that advice before. What specifically do you do to get your company's name out there to bring in new clients?
So for me, the content engine is the primary driver. And just by simply sharing how I do what I do, I give like my best trade secrets away publicly for free. Like right now, if you're an Amazon seller listening to this, the best and fastest way to grow your sales is to update your main image, throw a keyword on it, and make sure all the accessories are present. If you sell a supplement, show the pill. If you sell a cream, make sure you have a splash of the cream outside of the bottle and anything else that will make it look some sizzle or some zazz. And that will double your click-through rate almost overnight. And that's going to lead to a lot of traffic. Your conversion rate goes up too when click-through rate goes up. It's an ironic correlation. A lot of people don't realize this, but on a regular e-commerce website, a typical conversion rate is like 1 or 2%, usually closer to 1. On Amazon, it's 10%. So Amazon has solved logistics and it's solved the purchasing funnel. It's solved conversion. That's why it's such an attractive platform. All you have to do is come in and figure out how to drive traffic. You obviously need a good product, but if you can solve sourcing and traffic, you're in an amazing place. as a business, as a brand. So recently, there were 3 posts that I came across where people were saying, "Hey, I'm looking for an Amazon agency." There were dozens and dozens of comments. "Hey, I sent you a DM and reach out to me." And instead of doing that, I spent 15 minutes on each of those posts. I went and looked at their Amazon listing and I custom sentence by sentence told them exactly what I would do, personalized to their experience. And I left those comments. Now, I have no idea if that will produce those individuals to reach out to me. In fact, I didn't even ask them to reach out to me. All I did was straight up add value. But I got to tell you, one of those comments got 26 likes. How many people have had a comment get 26 likes on a post in
Right.
2024? There's going to be so many people that see the comment and they're going to be like, wait a minute, if you're giving this shit out for free, I want to talk to you. What could you do for me? And so I think leading with value is very important, whether it's public content, whether it's one-to-one. But I do have a 30-person sales team. I've got BDR processes, all of our cold outreach, we lead with value.
That's a good strategy. It's advice that's been around for a long time. I mean, I'm an old guy and I've been around since the internet basically started to boom. And it's the same advice that's been there all along. There's kind of a change in terminology these days. I've talked to people who say, oh, these value added posts, they're bogus, they don't work, et cetera. You have to tell stories. And then I say to them, but isn't that just another way of providing value to the customer? I think it really depends on knowing who your audience is, right? In your case, these are people who are struggling and they don't really know what they can do to improve things with Amazon. And that's why they're looking for an Amazon agency. So I think it's brilliant to spend a little bit of time, record a video and say, here's what I would do, because now you're showing them what it's like to work with them. Like it's what we do my wife and I own a VA agency, a virtual assistant agency. And one of the things that we do as a lead magnet is we have small blocks of time that we'll give away for free just to show how it is to work with our people. And we've never had somebody sign up for one of those and not hire us for the service because they're testing the waters. And I think that's
A
people
free
are doing
trial, buy before you buy, try before you buy.
right. It's just so smart to do that. And you're answering their questions. And you know what? It could take a little bit of, some people are going to say, oh, it's going to take time, but that's okay. Be patient. You've got time, right? They're going to try out what you told them. And if it works, they're going to hire you. And I think that's an amazing approach. You mentioned your team. You have a large team. How do you manage and maintain such a large team and ensure that everything is consistent quality and performance?
So I have 535 employees, and the client that I signed up from that LinkedIn post from day one is still with me 6 years later. And I haven't been on a client call with them in well over 3 years. And so that's a testament of SOPs, standard operating procedures, right? So at my company, I have well over 1,000 SOPs. I've probably written 200 of them myself. And everything that we do is super structured. I have over 400 employees in the Philippines. I visited them twice in the last 2 years. Had a great time. Picked up I didn't know what mangosteen was. That's my favorite fruit in the world now. I've got a delivery that's supposed to hit my house today. I'm super excited about that. And I learned what this thing called canyoneering was while I was out in the Philippines. Just an amazing physical experience, going down a canyon, jumping off cliffs, and floating down 4 hours of river rafting material. But overall, at agencies, everything that we do or face is always a people problem. And systems are one of the best ways to box people in so that they don't create their own problem, right? As an agency, your job is to be fired by a client. Your job is to shovel manure. Your job is to be yelled at sometimes, hopefully not, but sometimes that happens. Your job is to do all of the dirty work that the client doesn't want to do. It's painful for them. That's why we have a job. So I've tried to build structure around all of these processes. Even yesterday, I made a post to my company and I tagged about 100 people and I said, hey, you have over 50 unread emails in your inbox. One of my vision statements is to have a 0 unread inbox. And I have a video on YouTube about it. I have a process. I have an SOP. Fix it, guys, by end of day Friday or else. And so things like that can be reinforced over and over again. It took the Chick-fil-A guy 10 years to get buildings to have all of their customer service say, my pleasure. He probably went to the Dominican Republic or Mexico or something and heard some Spanish take on that, went home and said, man, I really wish my customer service people would say that because it's unique. It makes you feel good. Like I'm a CEO, but I'm the repeater in chief in reality. And that's the job of a CEO, is just to repeat vision over and over again and keep that process so we can keep that quality up.
The story about Chick-fil-A always interests me because he must really have wanted them to say my pleasure to work that hard at it, because people would give up. But it's a testament to just being consistent. It's one of the things that I value in relationships with other people is consistency. I don't want you to one time, you're faced with a similar situation. I don't want you to one time to go to the right and another time to go to the left, because then I'm never going to know what I should approach you with, how I should approach you. I like consistency. So that's really great. How are you staying ahead of the competition when the marketplace is changing so quickly?
Amazon's always changing. Outbound sales processes are changing. Google does a Google update. That's changing. Everything in digital marketing is always changing, right? And someday there's going to be a marketplace bigger than Amazon, and I'll have to change over to that marketplace too. But at the end of the day, if we keep pressing forward with the core value of learning and teaching, I basically joke to my people. I say, hey, we don't run an agency. We run an education company that happens to be an agency. And by having that sort of vision, right? No other agency in my space takes an education viewpoint like that, right? By having that standpoint, we set ourselves apart. We attract other like-minded people who love learning. By the way, high learners end up having higher detail orientation. It allows us to attract people who will follow rules and conform. And when you're in a delivery-based business, guess what? Having conformity to follow the rules and deliver the same Chick-fil-A sandwich over and over again, the same exact way, and always say my pleasure, you need high detail people for that. And so I figured out how to like puzzle piece this together, a large organization, international, no physical business, and make the culture work. Some people who have graduated from my company will send me a note sometimes 6, 12 months later and be like, man, I really miss the Slack community we had, right? It was like being plugged into the Borg in Star Trek. There was just so much learning, so much communication. This place I work at now, nobody's talking, nobody's learning, and I miss it. And that's such a unique thing that compels people to stay at an organization is culture. And culture is always top down. I've worked at so many different organizations that had so many top down problems that I couldn't solve because I was the grunt. And I made a very specific decision, a firm decision that I wanted to build a culture that looked like this. And then I went out and built it and maintained it. And you have to do the maintenance. So hard to do the maintenance.
Good for you. I think culture is the number one thing companies overlook when hiring people. You have what works well with you, and you know what that is. Why not try to identify if this candidate fits? It just makes sense to me. And I think I coach my executives. A lot of them work for bigger companies, and so they feel like they have no control over any of that. And I'll say, well, you can, just because your company has this culture and you don't necessarily agree with it, doesn't mean you can't create your own culture within your department. And then I coach them to do things like show on your social media what your team's working on, give them praise on social media. Who
It
wants to work
attracts.
for you? They're going to look you up on Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever, and they're going to say, oh, look at this guy. He's great to work for. He actually praises his employees. I think it's an often overlooked small little detail that you can do that sets you up for stronger hires in the future. So let's look at My Amazon Guy from a more personal perspective. So what's been your proudest moment since starting My Amazon Guy?
There's been a lot of big initiatives that we've undertaken, right? I don't save babies. I help brands build income. I help people like with their livelihood. I'm very proud of the fact we've created 535 jobs. But there's one specific initiative that is very close to my heart. We were at 118 employees at the time, and I was running the calculations and I realized that we were going to implode from client demand and I couldn't hire fast enough. And so I sat down and I was like, what is the craziest CEO idea I could do to fix this problem? And you know what I came up with? Hire 100 interns. I wanted to double my company and have 100 interns hired. Oh, and by the way, do it in 30 days. And I went to my HR recruitment team and I called up an impromptu meeting on a Monday morning at 9 a.m. I had my full plan. I was ready to roll. And I called them out. I said, hey guys, we're going to hire 100 interns in 30 days. Please start executing this immediately. And I said, here's how we're going to do it. Yada, yada, send them off. 24 hours go by and I didn't see any movement. I was very concerned. I called everybody up. for another impromptu meeting. I said, guys, it's day 2. You got 29 days left to hire 100 interns. What have you done? I didn't like the answers I got, and I sent them off. And I said, go hire 100 interns. You have 29 days. It felt very much like one of those moments, me staring my company in the face, because guess what? Day 3, had to call another impromptu meeting with my whole recruitment team. And I basically looked them in the eyes and say, do you love me? Because if you do,
Yeah.
go hire 100 interns. You have 28 days. By the end of that day, 22 offers went out. We hit the 100 interns, hired in 21 days. We crushed it. Most of those employees, at least 80%, stayed for at least a year at MAG. That means we not only just went through the motions, but we actually executed the vision and found the right talent and picked the right people. And it was crazy. It was what I call a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. If you read Good to Great, I have learned that I can do one BHAG a quarter. I can get away with one BHAG a quarter as a crazy CEO. That was a very difficult pivot point in our trajectory, but it set us up for such massive success. I was able to continue my crazy 100% year over year growth from a sales perspective. For the CEOs of the world listening to this, one BHAG a quarter, do it, man. It's going to make such a difference.
Yeah, that's huge. You're coming from a perspective that I'm used to. Like the company that I worked for early on in my career, they were really big about being on the cutting edge of the new business advice and whatnot. We even had a business consulting company that would come in on a weekly to run some of our meetings for us. It was a fun time. But let's figure out, what kind of advice would you give someone who wants to start out selling on Amazon? And
Spend more time.
you already said be prepared to invest at least $5,000. Let's go from there.
Yeah. So make sure you spend months picking your product, right? If you try and use data to pick your product, you're going to fail. And that's a very odd stance that I'd say most people in my sector would disagree with. And I'm trying to give this advice because I think it's very good advice. It's pointed advice. Stick to what you know. If you have 20 years of experience in one sector, whether it's a hobby, you are ice climbing, you could sell ice picks. If you were an international chess player like I was growing up, playing chess tournaments in high school and the US Open and all those good things, I could sell chess sets. But if I try to sell bamboo dental floss, and I'm not a dentist, I'm going to lose to the dentist who sells bamboo dental floss, right? If I was going to sell a supplement and I'm going to compete against a chemist who's made their own formula, if I'm going to compete against an MMA fighter who's got a black belt in jujitsu, I'm going to lose to those guys because they stuck to what they know. And so use data only to support your decisions, not to dictate your decisions. You must first understand how you're going to build that brand. There are so many products on Amazon. You can find anything on Amazon. How you decide which product you are going to sell will dictate everything. And you're not going to get your product idea from a guru like me. You're not going to get your product idea by watching YouTube clips and people driving around Lambos and talking about how awesome their passive income is on Amazon, because it's freaking not passive income. It's a very difficult process. But if you build a private label brand on Amazon, it can be life-changing wealth for you and your family. But let's be clear. Your profit margin on Amazon after all is said and done is not going to exceed 15% at scale. Maybe as a one-man band, you'll tip it out at 25%, eke it out in the first 2 years. That was what did it for me. I made $250,000 on Amazon as a solo man band selling wine glasses on Amazon and with a 25% net. But then the second I tried to scale it, I overinvested. I made a manufacturing facility. I tried to start 3 other brands. I started a soap brand, a holster brand, and a clothing apparel brand. I tried to do it all. And then I pissed away all my profits, tried to make new manufacturing techniques, and tried to make it American made because I freaking hated going to China. It was such a, oh man, China was awful. I hated going there. So if you stick to what you know, and if I had just picked the one thing and not tried to overexpand and try to use data to chase the fidget spinners of the popular trend of the year or whatever it might be, then I wouldn't have gone down some of those roads that were more stupid. By the way, my favorite book ever, The Road Less Stupid, right? Cunningham does a great job just walking us through how not to make million mistakes. I spent $2 million on software that I never launched. Right? I called it hybrid. I had the whole branding figured out. I knew who I was going to sell it to. I tried to recreate project management software, CRM software, time management software, all in one. And we'll throw in some PPC and keyword data software and just put that on the top. Nobody wanted to use my software internally. And when I was trying to use the user testing, and at that point, I was like, I'm 2 million deep in this. This is never going to go well. And so just like selling on Amazon or any business decision ever, you probably should take a smaller bite to start with, right? Like your MOQ, your minimum order quantity, don't go over 1,000 units. Don't make a $5,000 bet contest the water. It's better to go out of stock and be right that you picked the right thing versus holding $50,000 in stock you can't move or liquidate. So that's my best advice. Stick to what you know and test the waters.
Excellent. That's like everything else you shared today. That's a great nugget. And I really appreciate you being here, but we're out of time. So why don't you let people know where they can find you and connect with you, especially if they need help with their Amazon business?
myamazonguy.com or hit me up on YouTube or on LinkedIn. I post there every single day. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Awesome. So people, thanks for being here, watching Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. New episodes every Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Hope to see you back here next week.